You don't like guns?
Well, the topic we're talking about is
Well, I mean, you debated me earlier, and then you debated me, and I debated you back, but you left. But teachers, they need more support. I think that's totally BS. Teachers these days don't give a shit. My teachers in high school just did not give a fuck about kids these days. All they cared about was their paycheck. And even teachers online will say that it's more about their paycheck than teaching their own kids.
okay.
So I don't understand how they need more support and stuff like that.
So I definitely think that there are a lot of circumstances that go into how the kids are before they even get to the teacher. So kids can start school either at the age of at 5 or 6, depending upon state they're in, depending on which district they're in. And if they are not prepared before they even get to kindergarten, there's only so much that a teacher can do with that kid. And then the teachers are then, if the teachers are then expected to get that kid up to a certain level, and the kid does not have the support system at home, and the kid isn't having certain experiences at home, then there's only so much that they can do. So the support
when stuff like that happens, they tend to, I would say, hold the kid back a grade so he can redo the grade and learn basically what he does. Because my cousin actually got held back in kindergarten because he wasn't ready to go up to first grade.
Mm-hmm.
So when stuff like that happens, you do go through a holdback.
That's true.
It is the parent's decision, but as you're aggressing, if a kid's a lost cause, you're still going to have to teach them the best you can. It's not going to be like, well, this kid doesn't know anything, so I just can't do anything. If you were really a good teacher and cared about the kid, then you're going to do everything you can to help the kid and do it. But teachers these days don't care. They say, oh, that's too much work. All they really care about is their paycheck.
Absolutely. And if you're just talking about one kid out of 28 in a classroom, that's great. But if you're looking at 5 to 10 kids in a classroom, then that's a huge percentage of kids that
5 out of 10 out of 28. Well, they would still be considered deviant. But if you have that many kids there, then you need to change your teaching strategies to help them more than the other kids. Because if the other kids can handle it, then you need to add in a couple more things to help the other kids at it. For example, when a teacher does examples on the board, everyone doesn't get it. So they continue till everyone gets it. And if they have any questions, they raise their hand and etc. Now, if they just did one example and said, all right, you guys are good, well, most of the class probably is not going to get it until they realize what they have to do. And that's in all classes. So I don't understand how, if this kid needs to be taught more, how do teachers need more support on that? Because it's their job to do that.
Yeah. So I have a 7-year-old. I have a daughter, and I'm part of the committee at the school that's called the SAC committee, the School Advisory Committee.
Okay.
And it's made up of parents. It's made out of teachers and also administrators in the school. And we make the decisions on finances. If the school has money in the budget, where should that money be spent? We take a look at the surveys from not only the parent aspect, but also from the teacher aspect, how they feel the school is doing, where do they want the resources to go. We deal with parent engagement to find out, how do we engage the parents more into the school and those sort of things. And then we make the decisions year round, even to we take a look at the numbers, how many students are enrolled and so on and so forth.
So, I mean, when you say the teachers need more support, the rates are poor and stuff like that, are you saying the education system needs to be reformed? Are you saying when they get out of high school, they're just fucked in the real world because of their school-wise?
So some of them are. So literacy is a huge issue.
Well, then I would take that back. Have you ever been to community college?
No.
Well, community college, I say their tests are fraudulent, I would say, and put you in the beginner category. Now, when you do community college and you start at the bottom, you therefore relearn everything you did just as a kid. just a quicker time. Now, as an adult, if you can't comprehend that in a community college, then that's not, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't know what to say to them anymore, because you're learning this stuff over again in college, and you should be able to retain it as an adult if you're not getting the support you never did at home or whatever from that.
Okay. So before they can even get to community college, they've got to look at the first 5 years of development, right? So let's focus on the first 5 years of development.
First 5 years of development, like as a kid?
Yes, the
Okay.
most crucial time when the brain is growing at the fastest rate,
Okay.
when it's crucial for them to learn as much as possible, because that can set the path for learning and growth and development for the future, right? So before they can even think about community college, you've got to start in the first 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
If so, the teachers, the pre-K teachers, the kindergarten teachers, the first grade teachers, it's pretty significant that kids have learning at that point, because that's when their brain development is happening.
So it's kind of like saying if you don't go to preschool, you're just a lost cause almost.
If the right intervention does not happen during that time, and then they go to elementary school, and then the measurements are put on them in elementary school, and they don't have the right metrics in place, to expect the teachers to get the kids up to where they need to be, it's just not going to. And I'm in Florida. I don't know.
I'm in California.
Okay. So in Florida, we have something called the FSA, which it used to be called the FCAS or whatever, because of the No Child Left Behind Act. And in third grade is when it starts. And we looked at the science tests, we looked at the math tests, and all this sort of stuff. And at one particular school, because there were so many kids who were struggling with reading, the science teacher said, if they are not reading by the time they leave first grade, they are not going to be able to pass the science tests. And they're not going to be able to pass the math test. And so we said, okay, well, we need to get more volunteers reading in the kindergarten and first grade classroom in order to help these teachers. So what happens is the parents, are you still there? So I'm going to keep talking. I'm hoping maybe you're still there. So we got volunteers to go in and read to the kindergarten and first grade to the first grade students.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was happening was, when you'd go talk to those teachers, all they asked was that the parents would read to those kids 15 minutes a day. Those kids were not getting additional.
Okay, well, I'm gonna leave right now.
Those kids were not getting additional reading time at home. So those kids, if they are moved on after first grade, by the time they get to third grade, they're not going to be prepared for those major tests. And I think that they should only be forced to take the test. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think.
But what do you say to the kindergarten teachers and first grade teachers and second grade teachers that don't care about teaching the student? They're just going to teach them the basic stuff and stop.
I haven't come across any of those teachers.
In California, that's quite of a bit. I don't know about Florida, but it's kind of crucial to say you haven't came across any.
Well, I mean, because I spend so much time in my daughter's schools, and because I'm on all these committees.
Do you go to a private school or public?
Well, my daughter goes to a public school.
A public school?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess we live in two different areas, so I don't know about down there, and I guess you don't know about down here, so can't really comment that. I don't have children, so I'm not in the school as much as you are.
Yeah.
But
I went to school in New York. I went through all my public school experience before I went to college was in New York.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to a private school?
You mean for K through 12?
Yeah, or any grade at all? No?
I mean, my college was private.
Your college was private? And have you ever went to a college public?
No.
No? I mean, I guess you really can't comment. I've went to both. I went to private school through K through 6. And it's just a lot different being taught there than going to a public school where
And you think the teachers, do you think the teachers cherry pick? Like if
Oh
they
yeah,
see,
in public
oh,
school, yeah, they have favorites. They have favorites that they're gonna give a good grade, or they're gonna do all that extra stuff. Yes, they do.
look, okay, so I don't doubt that that happens
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like if a teacher identifies that, like, oh, that kid's smart, like that kid's going to make it, that they may have some biases, right? Like where
Mm-hmm.
they're going to develop biases in the classroom and be like, oh, that kid's, I'm going to probably give that kid a little bit more attention because they're smart. Whereas little Johnny, if he's a troublemaker or if he's not going to show much potential, then
That's
maybe I'm
not
not.
true because I actually had a health class and I never turned in one assignment and I got an A plus. Never did anything in that class.
So, and that's your experience. So I understand you've got to go by that. I understand you've got to go by that. My point is, and I went to a conference and I saw Laura Bush speak, and I was blown away by her as a speaker because, first off, she gave a really good perspective of what it was like to be first lady during the time that George W. Bush was in the presidency. And second off, she gave some facts and figures about the literacy rates of the United States, and she just said how bad it was. There is an underlying situation that we're facing with immigration and literacy. And when we have immigrants come, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, but when we do have immigrants coming in, and if English is not their first language, and then they're going into the public school system, and these kids are struggling because they're being taught in English, but they're going home and they're not getting anything reinforced at home, but then they have to be moved through the system because they might have teachers that don't care because they're just willing to move them through, and they're not getting a good, strong education.
So how would you go about a bad teacher, you would say?
Say that again, you broke up a little bit.
How would you go about a bad teacher?
So my background is that I am a human resources person, and I used to work for an education company, and it was a private education company because it was charter schools. And I hired principals, I hired teachers, and I also fired them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time a principal called me in and asked me to go into this classroom and just check out how this teacher was doing. And it was in one of the poorest of the poor areas in Miami. And she was in charge. She was leading this classroom, and it was a really simple exercise, but she just got it all wrong. And after I was done, I walked into the principal's classroom and I said, she's got to go. And we fired her on the spot.
You fired her on the spot. No.
But that was because
you're not looking at the whole. What if that one thing she just got wrong and she was actually a great teacher?
But they wouldn't have called me in if it was just that one thing.
But I mean, you only went in for that one thing though, so.
No. But they didn't call me in because it was just that one thing. They called me in because there had been multiple issues.
But the thing is, after a certain amount of years, you're protected by some school group or something organization.
So that's when you have tenure.
Over here, it's way less than 10 years.
No, it's called tenure.
Oh, tenure? Oh.
After you've worked for a certain amount of time.
I think over here it's about 2 years and then you're protected or something like that.
Yeah, so it all depends on
So how would you, I don't think you can just walk in a classroom like that and fire a teacher when she has that.
No, the company that I was working for was private.
Okay.
So it's different than.
Yeah, well, I mean, private school does their own program. They don't really, they could hire somebody that's not even really related to the subject of the class and have it teach. But I don't know, as have I seen in public school, a lot of teachers just don't care. It's more about, I'm getting paid here, so you better listen in my class and sit down and don't even do anything in there. Not rather than teaching them. They will, for example, give you, hey, like, here's the example, but I mean, we all don't learn the same way. I mean, some of us need different types of examples and stuff like that. Now, most of the teachers don't do that. They just say, this is how it is. If you don't need it, go look it up online or something like that.
And I completely agree with you. on that.
So I wouldn't say more teachers need help. I would just say that when they hire teachers, there should be more of a stricter thing about how they're going to teach and stuff like that.
But I think that's a contradiction, because you can't say that. Well, maybe you need to clarify, what do you mean by a stricter guide rules, like on
No, I
how
mean, the same education and everything, but like if a teacher's going to be here and say, I'm only doing it for the paycheck and not more for the kids, because teachers should be in it more for the kids than a paycheck, because paychecks for teachers aren't really that big, at least in California. But I don't know. That's the way I see it.
So what some people tried to say was that teachers' performance should be rated by how well their students do, right?
But if that's not true, because some teachers, well, some schools will actually change their SAT scores, not SAT scores, their I forgot what they're called.
Their standardized test scores.
Yeah. And they'll actually give students, I believe one school got caught and they were in big trouble for doing that stuff.
Exactly. So what I was telling you before, being on the committees that I'm on, they watch very closely all those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So you were saying that some kids are held back because they don't meet those numbers. All those numbers matter. So if you find that there's 5 to 10 students in a class that aren't up to where they should be.
What would you say about the teacher that just passes them, that doesn't care?
But you see, that's a problem, because all you're doing is just passing on the problem to the next year.
And with more stricter work, I guess you could say.
With more advanced work, and then they're still not going to be ready for the next year.
Yeah. So how would you go about a public school way? Because I know private schools run their own program, but what would you do to the public schools?
So like I said, so one of the things that we tried to look at was parent involvement, because I do think, when I say that they need help, I don't necessarily think that the help has to come from the school. I think the help has to come from the parents being more involved in doing more with their kids, who are also the students. And I think the parents have to take a lot more responsibility in realizing that they are part of the education. It's not just we send our kids to school and that they're just going to, that's where the education happens, and then they come home and everything's good there. Like we have a responsibility ourselves to be part of the education process.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, but I mean, I wouldn't say the teachers need more support. I'd say the school needs to hire better teachers, I would say.
All right. So if I were to change the way I wrote the argument, I would say the education system in the United States needs to be reformed. Literacy rates are poor, and teachers and parents need to work together to solve the issue. That's what I would say.
All right. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. But you don't have kids yet, right?
I mean, I really don't care. I just wanted to talk about guns, but because you debated me and I went back to you, so.
No, I don't think we've ever debated.
No, we've never did.
No, yeah, I've never debated. And I don't want to talk about guns. I do want to go shooting at some point in the next couple of weeks. I think I'm going to make a reservation to go shooting, but I don't really want to talk about guns.
I thought you don't like guns, though. Do you like guns at least?
I'm fine. I don't want to be on the receiving end of a gun.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say anybody would.
But I think guns are a necessary evil.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's all about the person. The person can get a gun, he's going to get a bat or a knife and kill people either way. That's just how it is, and people misguide it. I mean, it's kind of idiotic to say we should ban the AR-15 but keep pistols. Well, I mean, they're still a gun, you know?
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't really want to talk about guns. But other topics, if there's a topic that I see that I want to talk about, then I will. But education, I'd love to talk about.
What about Black Lives Matter? You like that group?
So that one, I don't know how I feel about that one yet. And I was thinking about it today because there are other people that have posted on it, and So I'm Jamaican, and most of my family's Jamaican, and I grew up here, but like my parents, they didn't experience any of the civil rights movement and all of that stuff. And
Hmm.
so, and they didn't, like I was taught the civil rights movement because I went to the school system here. But my parents saw the Selma movie, and that was the first time that they, or like whenever Black History Month comes around, that's when they see like the documentaries and stuff about like how people were treated then. But in Jamaica, there was no civil rights movement
Hmm.
because Black people are the majority. And it wasn't until they got to New York that they experienced racism. And the first people that introduced them to racism, they will tell you, were other Black people.
Mm.
Because they were just sort of like, oh, well, you're not going to get promoted because you're Black, or you're not going to be able to do this because you're Black. And my dad's sort of like, well, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
But because they never, in Jamaica, you don't hear things like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and you can ask anybody from a
And
Caribbean.
but did he get promoted and
Oh,
stuff like?
oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because I don't know. So anyway, so yeah, so I'm not quite sure how I feel about the Black Lives Matter movement yet. I'm watching it and seeing what happens, and then parents and I are talking about it, so we'll see.
All right, I'm gonna have to cut you short because I actually have to go to work. So,
Ciao.
ciao.